Welcome to Built to Finish. I'm your host, Stephen Pivnik. Join me each week as we explore the journeys of audacious goal setters. This includes experienced founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs sharing pivotal moments that propel their success. We'll also be talking with endurance athletes who push the limits of physical and mental ability. This show is brought to you by enriches, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services to help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Let's get started. Welcome to another exciting episode of Built to Finish. Today's guest is a seasoned professional with 25 years of experience in sales, a former Division I collegiate athlete, and a passionate advocate for aligning purpose with performance to create sustainable success. He is also a sales leadership expert, speaker, and coach, dedicated to helping sales leaders, executives, and teams rethink how they work, lead, and live. He is the author of a USA Today bestseller titled With Intention. Jon Giganti, welcome to the show.
Hey, Stephen. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, man. Great to be here with you.
You bet. Great to be speaking with you today. So, With Intention, for those of you on YouTube, here's what the book looks like. It's a phenomenal read. I highly recommend it. Congratulations on hitting the USA Today bestseller list.
Appreciate that. You too. Congrats on your book. It's a phenomenal read as well.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. Thank you. Well, I would love to, if we have time at the end, I would love to talk about the book publishing business. For those interested in bringing a book to life, which I hear 80% of the world has a book in them and want to get it out.
Yeah. Love that.
So what was a catalyst for With Intention? Was it a philosophy that you wanted to memorialize in a book, or did you have the idea for the book first and then you adopted the philosophy to live your life by?
Oh my gosh. That's a really cool question. I don't know if I've ever had that question yet. I love it, by the way. So it was actually born when I was a little kid. So I picked up a book. I think I was in maybe 5th or 6th grade. And I had 2 older brothers who were very highly accomplished athletes. So we were all 2 years apart. My dad was a collegiate wrestler too, and then a collegiate wrestling coach. So
Okay.
athletics, and performance was kind of in our blood. And my dad was a teacher as well. But I picked up a book, grew up in Cleveland. My brother went to a school called, actually both my brothers, and I went for a little bit, called St. Ed's in Cleveland. Really, really good private Catholic high school, good in sports. And the wrestling coach at St. Ed's, which they were like the best team in the country, like that's how good these guys were. The wrestling coach, Howard Ferguson, wrote a book called The Edge. And it was like a coffee table type book. And I remember picking it up, and it was all about like a lot of stories and quotes, primarily sports, if my memory serves me, but it was just like a motivational book. And it was the first time I ever picked up something and was like, couldn't put it down. I couldn't get enough of it. I was already playing a lot of sports, soccer mostly at that point, but I was a wrestler and other sports playing at that young age. And I just couldn't get enough of that. And that was like the seeds were born of like, oh my gosh, I'm inspired by a book. That's pretty incredible. And then as, life goes on, my mom was an English teacher by the way as well. So, you start to read in high school. And as I got out and the seeds were planted in me of like, one day I think I'm going to write a book. But, I never knew how to do it. Right. It always seemed so big to me before. And it was a big ordeal to a labor of love. I help people to write it, but, certainly wasn't ready when I was in 5th or 6th grade to write a book, right? You got to live your life. And so, I always wanted to do it. I'm fascinated. You can see the bookshelf behind me. I love books. I read a lot. Always have.
Very, very nicely color coordinated. I might
Yeah.
add. For those of you not on YouTube, you should see the wonderful colors.
I go back and forth. With that. I've had it color coordinated than not. And then I go back to it. I think it's more aesthetically pleasing color coordinated. It's kind of fun to.
Very nice. Good job. I haven't seen many like that. So well done.
Thank you. But, so, life experience, obviously a lot, probably more the failures than the successes really got me thinking about like, okay, how can I share something that's going to be beneficial to people? And is it, you go through a process, as I'm sure you did with the book, and it's like, who wants to read my stuff? Like why do I think I'm so good that I could write a book? And that was something to get over. Cause I think everybody honestly has something inside them to share, whether it's a book or not, right? Like we all have some wisdom that we can pay it forward and pass on. So, um, I mean, many steps along the way that led me down that journey. I didn't write it until I was 45, 46 years old. Right. So I think there's an element to that too, of like the wisdom gathered and the life experience gathered. It's like, now I'm ready to put this down on paper.
Yep, and putting it on paper, you did incredibly well. It's like I said, it's a great read. So you speak about a lot about setbacks and struggles. What were some of the hardest lessons in learning to live with intentionality, and like how did you overcome the obstacles?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I was really blessed as a kid to have a lot of success, both academically and athletically. And honestly, it kind of came easy. I didn't really understand that I was working hard, for example. Like I had a soccer goal in my backyard when I was growing up. So like it was just in me to go out and train, and then you get pretty good and then you get better coaching and you get on better teams. And it's just, oh, I'm just going to practice. It just became a natural way of doing things. Um, so I don't know, it just became part of the way I went about things, but I was never really intentional about it. Hence the name of the book is With Intention. Um, and so I played collegiate soccer at a school called Bowling Green, Division I, mid-major, good school. We were top 20 in the country. So you can imagine it's very competitive when you get to that level. Everybody's good. Everybody's good. Like our first team and second team would battle in practice. They would literally be punches thrown in practice because that's how competitive it was. Because our second team at times would beat the first team pretty consistently. That's how deep the team was. So like every day you're battling for your position. And if you slip up, there's a guy waiting to take your spot. And it only gets more intense in the professional ranks and whatnot. So, and I say, give you the context, kind of everything came easy because once I didn't understand how to produce at that level on a consistent basis. I just thought I always started and I would always produce until I didn't, until I had some mental stuff going on. I just had some relationship challenges off the field. My parents had split up after my freshman year. Honestly, I was probably partying too much. That was part of it. Typical college thing to do. And talk about the edge. I talk about the book, The Edge. I lost the edge. And so I got to the point where I was an outside left midfielder. My job was to cross the ball over for our attacking players to score. And I got to the point where I couldn't consistently cross the ball anymore. Like it got that bad. I don't know if you remember like Steve Sachs in baseball
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
who was the other guy? Chuck Knobloch, I think, played for the Yankees. And these guys couldn't throw the ball from second base to first. These guys are professional paid athletes, right? They've done this. You talk about Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours. Like, how does a professional peak athlete go from being able to execute a simple task to not? I felt that. Like, it got to the point where I couldn't cross the ball consistently. And so it becomes a monster that you fight. And it became this like thing. I never wanted to talk about it. I was embarrassed about it. And I finally got to the point where I wasn't playing as much as I had hoped to. And that didn't make it to professional ranks. I just had lost the edge. And so, um, I hid from that for a long, long time, which then I got into the business world. I was kind of getting some professional help, but wasn't really open about it. And then I started having panic attacks speaking, and I'm a sales guy by trade, right? So I go from being a really good athlete to not being able to perform on the field. I go from being a pretty good young up and coming salesperson to not being able to perform and present in the boardroom.
Almost deja vu, right?
Dude, I mean, it was like crazy. And I'm 35 years old going, what the hell happened? Like, I've got mouths to feed, 3 kids, my wife, and, it leads to a lot of dark stuff too, because I was drinking too much and you try to numb the pain. And there's a whole mental health element to this that I never took the trash out. And so when I finally realized like, okay, it's okay to not be okay. Let me talk about this. And one of the part of the story is that I started having these panic attacks, and I had one major one in Chicago at a sales meeting, and I very embarrassing, but I ended up going to Toastmasters like literally a month after and just grind it out. And for anybody that doesn't know, it's a speaking club that, pretty informal. For like 2 years, I went just to rebuild my speaking skills and rebuild my confidence. And that's really the book kind of aligns with that story of how I went about rebuilding the habit of being able to speak. And that was really the with intention process of It's a framework of how do you build yourself and continuously improve. But the key is to put yourself in position to serve others, right? So to me, there's the whole thing. And so I don't know what with the speaking thing and the soccer thing, I finally, this is the beautiful part about life. Once you realize that life's a journey and they're all lessons and you never really fail, you're just learning. It becomes this call to arms, or at least it has for me, of I'm going to use everything I've experienced in my life as a lesson that I can now teach to other people. So where I used to run away from, oh man, I was a failure in soccer, I was a failure in the boardroom. It became, no, no, no. Those are just lessons. And now I can actually build into other people and teach them. And I'm blown away when I share these stories. I always have people that say, oh my gosh, this is so helpful. Let me share my story. Like we all have a story of struggle, right?
Oh,
So
100%.
you've got your journey's incredible. Like what you've been through to come over to the US and build the company. And so, I mean, it's unbelievable. So I know it's long winded, but that's kind of the journey.
That's totally fine. And I couldn't agree more. So there's a chapter in my book called DNF, Did Not Finish.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just like to tell people to use any sort of not finishing event, not as a failure, but just as a data point. And if you view it as a data point, then it just becomes a learning experience. And your next one is going to be that much better. So failure is really just not trying again. The actual act of the failure itself at any point in time is not, should not be deemed as a failure. It should just be a data point, a learning point. Dust yourself off and try it again a little bit wiser and smarter second time around.
So what, if you don't mind me asking, what was that like when you did not finish? That was in a triathlon, right?
It was in a triathlon, correct?
Yeah.
I
Was
did.
that your first one you ever did too?
No, it was. You know what? If it was my first one, I'm not sure if I would have taken my own lessons and tried again. I probably would have been so disheartened and disappointed because it is a Herculean effort, right? It was much further down the line where I was really close to qualifying for Kona, and I only needed one more finish because I wasn't going for the time qualification. There's a quantity qualification for Kona, which is a really long story, but I needed one more finish. And after I did the entire ordeal of a 2.4 mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and a full marathon, 26.2 mile run, I later learned in the hotel room that I missed one of the bike cutoff by 90 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So it was only 90 seconds. They didn't close the bike course yet. They allowed me to continue the run. I hammered out like a sub 6 hour marathon on exhausted legs,
Okay.
only to learn that my result was a DNF, did not finish.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And I mean, I could have cried, but what I did was I coincidentally, I was signed up for another Ironman only 5 days later in Delaware, just as an insurance policy. So thank God I gave myself this insurance policy. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to recover because it takes days, sometimes weeks to recover from such a exertion of effort. But I did. I showed up in Delaware and I got her done.
Amazing. How many days later was it?
6 days later. So this race was on the DNF was in Wisconsin, and then on a Sunday, and then the next race was on Saturday in Delaware.
Gotcha. See, it's funny to hear you say that, because didn't you do back to back last year, like one day after the next for?
Yeah, so that was a different type of race. It was called Ultraman, and that's a 3-day triathlon where you're racing ridiculous distances for 3 days in a row.
Yeah, but to your point, if you didn't have to go through that DNF and then pick up and do the next one 5 days later, you maybe weren't going to be prepared to do this 3-day race.
Yeah, 100%. I proved a lot to myself, both mentally and physically, that it's amazing what the body is capable of if when the mind is leading.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally agree. That's amazing. All right. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you bet. Of course. Everybody knows about the word attention deficit disorder, but you coined the term intention deficit disorder. So can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. First, I want to give credit to the source. So Dr. Russell Barkley is where I learned of that term initially. So intention deficit disorder. So Dr. Barkley he's retired now, but was like the world's foremost expert on ADD and ADHD. And I actually interviewed him on my podcast a couple of years back, and when I was doing research on the book. And so that's where I first came across it, and it blew my mind. Like, because of course, right? We hear of ADD, ADHD all the time, and so, and I have someone in my family that deals with that. But what Barkley talked about was that most humans actually deal with IDD, or intention deficit disorder. So it's essentially that it's the performance gap, really. So you know what you should be doing, but you don't do it, right? So if we were really honest with ourselves, we would look at that and say, yeah, I mean, okay, I know I shouldn't, I don't know, eat the chocolate chip cookie or 5 of them, which sometimes I can't stop. I love desserts. Um, but obviously it's okay once in a while, but if you do that day after day after day after day, that's going to probably lead to something not so good, or too many beers, or whatever it may be. And so, intention deficit really stuck with me, because I had this whole concept of with intention. And I'm like, okay, that codified the fact that, okay, we all deal with this disorder, right? You're not going to find it in the medical book. It's not in there. But if we can have the awareness to it, like, oh my gosh, I'm here and I want to get to here, right? So I just need to close the gap. And there's so much that happens in that gap. But I think when we have the awareness to know, like, look, and it's a simple concept, right? It's not, none of this stuff is easy, right? It's like, it's one thing to say, I want to close the gap and get better or do whatever, but you gotta put in the work and put in the time to do it. And you're not going to always feel comfortable with it.
No, 100%. And you mentioned ADD. So for people that suffer with it, and we live in a world of constant distractions, right? They're all over the place. Are there any practical strategies that you would recommend for people to stay focused, on their purpose and on their goals?
The most practical thing is to be aware of it and to get the help you need first and foremost. So, right. So if you've got ADD or ADHD, like, go see a doctor or go get into a community that you can get the support, get the right help. That's been the best thing for one of my children that has it, is to get him in the right classroom, right? The right support at school. So you've got to advocate, especially if you have kids going through it, but if it's yourself, sure. There's so many things tactile. I'm a big productivity guy, right? So I'm big on using timers, for example. So I'll show you, I've got this cool little timer I just got, and I can set a timer for 30 seconds, or what's that? Or 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and it's in front of me. And so, if you want to perform a task, I like to gamify it. So it's like, if I want to write, it's like, I don't feel like writing. Well, John, I know if I can just get you to write for 10 minutes, usually you're going to get into some type of flow state and go from there. So I'll set a timer for 10 minutes and I'll equate it to working out, right? So I don't know about you. My guess is there's a lot of days you don't feel like going for your runs. I know you've talked about, your friends will drop you off 10 miles away when you're on a vacation with them, and you'll run back to that house.
Yeah, that way I have no choice but to get 10 miles.
No choice. My guess is you don't feel like it. And about 5 or 10 minutes into the run, you start to break that first sweat, and you get that little bit of that runner's high and that mojo. And then maybe you have one of the best runs you've ever had.
The hardest part is always starting.
The hardest part is always starting.
Well, an object in motion stays in motion.
That's right. There's a great quote I've heard James Clear say, and he attributes it, I think the guy's name is Ed Lattimore. The heaviest weight at the gym is the front door.
I love that.
Isn't that awesome? It's so true. It's like,
yeah,
it's the physics. It's action over emotion, which I'm huge on. It's just this idea of don't let your emotions hold you back. You just got to get moving. So, when we've done speaking training together, right? When I used to try and rehearse in my office, and it never worked, and I would get so frustrated. If I print out my script and I go outside and go for a walk, it's unbelievable the rehearsal I'm able to have just walking and talking. That's how I actually rehearse now. I go for an hour walk with my script. There's no distractions, right? And then you get your heart rate up again. Actually, the whole first draft of my book, I wrote I had my table of contents up, and I spoke it into Otter.ai, the app, that's how it was a crappy first draft, but that's how I just did the work on table contents, had my computer up, got on my Peloton bike, slow rate just to get my heart rate up a little bit. And I spoke the book out over probably a couple hours worth of sessions. And that was my first draft.
That's hysterical because the only way I can memorize my keynote, just like you, I can't do it in my office. I put on my headphones and I go for a walk in Central Park, and it looks like I'm having a conversation with somebody because I'm on my headphone, but I'm actually just going through my keynote, over and over and over again, and that's for me. So yeah, identical habit of memorization for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, there's something about the neuroscience of it, the movement, that I think his stuff sticks a little bit. So that, if someone's dealing with ADHD or ADD, which honestly, I kind of would argue, I'd love to test every single person in the world now. I feel like these phones have made us all ADD. I think we all deal with it in some way, shape, or form. But that's not to take away from people. It's like a real medical condition, right? That people need help with. Um, but yeah, there's certainly tricks to get you focused and get you executing. Absolutely.
Yeah, speaking about phones, you shared a wonderful productivity app with me that I would love for people to hear about. Can you give Strides a little bit of a plug? Because I think it's a phenomenal app.
Awesome. Yeah. It's a habit tracking app. And guys, there's like a million of these out there. Yeah. So it gamifies habits, right? So like, I think I probably shared with you, Stephen, I track 3 things every single day. So I call it share time. So for me is I read the Bible every morning. I have a sharpen the saw time. So that's like reading books or listening to podcasts. And then I have workout time. So like, actual breaking a sweat. But the thing with Strides that I like is I've kind of tricked it out to track every minute I do these things. And then I can just swipe it per minute. And I know that may sound a little neurotic, like this guy's per minute.
just a touch.
But, I try to get 100 minutes of workouts in a week, which doesn't seem like a crazy amount, especially for a guy like you. And I find I go over that, but if I'm doing, 5 20-minute workouts, that's better than nothing. Or if I do 3, 33-minute work, whatever it is. So yeah, Strides is a very cool app just to gamify habits. And I just find that, if I'm tracking something like a scoreboard, right? Like, thing it's like in sales, right? So running a company, you have your KPIs and you have a scoreboard and that's your North Star for what you want to go. If just you're training, you just got back from Ecuador, you're training. I'm sure you have a plan to get to Everest.
100%. And listen, the old adage, right? You can't improve what you don't measure. And these tiny little, measurement tools help significantly in getting you closer and closer to whatever goal you're trying to accomplish. So I'm a huge believer in that type of stuff.
Are you a goals guy? Like, do you write down goals?
I'm a big envisioning guy. So I call them BHAGs, big hairy S goals. So BHAGs are typically plastered right next to my computer. When I set the goal to sell my company, which happened around the same time as the goal I set to compete in the Ironman World Championship, I printed out a check to myself for a very specific amount of money, and I printed out a poster of Kona, the World Championship, and I put them next to each other, and I saw them all day, every day working, and like I love to say, the mind is an incredible muscle. It doesn't know the difference between an event which is properly envisioned or one that actually occurred. So if you envision something religiously, you're programming your subconscious to take the necessary actions to march towards those goals and make better decisions in order for those goals to become reality. So I'm a huge fan of vision boards and envisioning exercises.
Love it. Okay, good. That's what I thought. Me too.
Awesome.
Same. I've tinkered with this idea. I feel like there's this whole movement to get rid of goals and focus on just the process, which I think it's a both and. I think you need both. You need the North Star
100%.
and the goals, and then you have to understand what the process is. But I love that whole vision piece. That's a big part of the book, actually. What are you going after?
Yeah, I can't turn my computer around to show you, but right now I have the TEDx stage and Everest. So I want to land at TEDx talk and I want to get to the top of Everest. So it's right there. And I look
Well,
at it
are you
every day.
scheduled for TED yet?
I am not. I'm going through the application
Okay,
process.
cool. But
So
my guess is it's going to happen, right? You have that there. To your
it's
point, it's ingrained into your scene. I love it. I've got stuff up in my
it's
office.
it's on my board. It has to happen.
Yeah, amazing.
So speaking about goals, let's pivot a little bit towards sales. So you spent many years at a large company, running sales teams, right? Tell me a little bit about the culture that you fostered within your sales teams and how you had them execute for success.
Yeah. So the way I think about culture is this. It's, and I talk about this in the book too, but this concept of talk about attention versus intention. And I have the saying, attention requires a focused head, but intention requires a focused heart. Okay. So I believe there's a symbiotic relationship between head and heart. And I believe from a leadership perspective, whether it's any of the sports teams I played on, and I was fortunate to play on some championship level teams, I've worked with professional athletes and coaches and collegiate athletes and coaches, and then in the business world. And to me, a team's a team. I don't care if it's sports or business. But I believe from a culture standpoint, the teams that are connected at both the head and heart level are the teams that win championships. And I just, and the head level is one level. The heart level is the key level. This is the beneath the surface piece that,
Hmm.
um, you know it. You know it when you feel it. Like Ohio State just won the national football championship, which was a crazy run. I live in Columbus. Crazy run. Like everybody was calling for the coach's head after they lost to Michigan in the last game. And the guy couldn't walk around in town. Like death threats, everything. It's terrible. That's a whole nother topic too. Like, oh, I'm not from here. I'm an Ohio State fan, not a fanatic, but people are fanatical here. And then they go on this run and they win 4 straight playoff games and win the national title. And my perception of it, I don't know the team and the players well, but they were very connected at a heart level. Like these guys and it almost steered them even more, all the adversity that they were able to then drive one, thankfully this first year of the 16 team or 12 team playoff, that helped them out a lot because they wouldn't have made the playoffs if it was the 4 team playoff system as before. So, but I think, and I've seen this, any of the teams I've run, like my philosophy in sales to sales leadership was partnership, meaning like I wanted my sales reps I wanted to be partners with them. I did not view it as I'm the boss, you do as I say. Now, yeah, there's elements of leadership that you have to
Of
address
course.
conflict and, lead. But, like my favorite thing is when I had a rep call me and to work through an issue or a strategy or something, and I could put everything aside and not be so overwhelmed where you only got 5 minutes. You're like transactional, right? Like I
Hmm.
think best cultures are not transactional. I think you're actually partnership focused and actually spend the time listening and helping someone navigate things because it just builds immense trust, right? And
Yeah, I
I
mean
know,
that's where the hard component comes in, right? I mean, if you're clear your calendar to help one of your reps work on a strategy, then obviously you're building up a ton of trust and camaraderie with the individual.
yeah. And they feel it, right? I mean, and by the way, I was once a sales rep that was very selfish, that I was all about my quota and had some success, but it was fleeting until I got like booted off accounts and almost lost my job. And this is all kind of part of the journey of, I mentioned the panic attacks, right? This is all similar because I was in a very selfish mindset. And once I learned that, I'm going to put the customer first, I really am going to like, it's all about serving them. Guess what? Sales became the lagging indicator because I was authentically focused. They felt it. It's the same thing with leadership and building teams. If you're in it for the right reason to build into the people and serve the people, you're going to have success as a byproduct of that. It's just a natural thing. So, but I think, Stephen, I feel like, building a business, selling, it's inherently selfish. Think about it. You're paid. Let's count. Like you're paid on going to hunt and getting the kill. So of course you're waking up and you have your goal and you have it. And it's like this paradox of sorts of how do you balance that? And I think the best at what they do is, I know you've done it, is that ability to be a servant leader and win. Like if you can balance the two, that's where the magic.
Yeah, if you can figure out that formula, then it's inevitably going to lead to success for sure. So obviously, there isn't always success, especially on the sales front, right? So there's bad months, there's bad quarters. How did you and your team recover from those events? Let's say you had a bad quarter, you missed a number. How do you recover from that on the following Monday morning?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mindset. So it's this whole thing you talked about, the DNF, right? So we had a motto that it was the obstacle's the way. So Marcus Aurelius quote. Ryan Holiday wrote a great book, same title, fantastic read. But this idea of like, whatever happens, you don't run away from it, right? You run towards it. And so, and I just came across, I can't believe I've never heard about this until a few months ago, but the bison that runs into a storm. Are you familiar with that?
You know what? As you were talking, I'm like, when you're done, I'm gonna mention the bison story. But since you brought it up, you go ahead. I think it's a great story.
It's a myth. So it's all it is like a cow. If a storm comes, cows will run away from the storm. And that same storm, a bison will run into the storm because they know they'll get through it faster. And there's amazing images of this in video. It's incredible to me. And I think it's such a great metaphor for life.
Hmm.
If we lean into the storm. So to use your sales question, um, not that this was perfect, by the way, because again, we're humans, we're
Of course.
flawed. So it's very easy to blame and complain and the quota was wrong, whatever else. But the
Sure.
more you can lean in and get your team to say, look, it sucks, but let's control what we can control. And that's our attitude and our actions going forward. Um, then you can do something about it. So that we would talk about that all the time, just in, okay. Next play is a good mindset. I've heard people talk about too. I love that. So in sports, it's like my son's a basketball player. So, basketball is a bang, 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 but it's very different than soccer. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
turnovers, a lot of action. The best of the best can get over quickly when they miss a shot or have a turnover. Next play, let's go and move on. And so the short memory is really, really important in whether it's life or business.
Yep, I agree. Agree. So you have done something which many people are very afraid of doing, and you had the guts to leave corporate America and basically bet on yourself. Talk to me a little bit about that decision, how that came about and how you finally pulled the plug, and B, let the listeners know about the coaching that you're currently offering.
Yeah, gosh. Well, one, I want to thank you because you've been one of my trusted group of advisors as I've
Oh,
had a chance to get to know you the last couple of years and an inspiration. And I don't take that lightly. Seriously, so many people have encouraged me and even if it's not directly, just watching people's journeys. And so for me, look, I wrote the book a couple of years ago. It was super fortunate that it did well. I started speaking on stages but I felt like I wanted to scale the impact more. So I would, for instance, I'd get off a stage at a corporate event and I'm very authentic in my story. You've heard it. I shared a little bit of it, but I talk about mental health very openly in my battles. And every single time I speak, someone comes up to me and says, thank you so much. Let me share my story of struggle. Right. So especially in a corporate setting where a lot of business leaders, that's just kind of never let them see you sweat mindset, which I used to have the same. So I saw the impact of it and I felt like I needed to explore this. Right. And but I had a full-time job at a great company and a sales team that I led and clients. And I just got to the point where I was like, all right, if I'm going to make a move, now's the time to make it. And this is something I've been thinking about for a couple of years, right? So it's not like I was impulsive and just did it. I had to really be thoughtful about this, talk to trusted advisors, be planful financially for it, right? But yeah, I mean, it's been a cool journey. I'm 3 months into it. Yes, I'm betting on myself, but I actually would rephrase it. I'm betting on others. I'm betting on the impact and that I'm a faith guy, right? I believe God will provide the opportunities. He already has. I've already seen it in the last couple months of partnerships and different companies I'm already working with. And just, yeah, I mean, just this idea of trusting that you'll figure it out. And just, I had a have a friend who's a professional soccer coach, and he said, look, John, you'll jump and you'll build your wings on the way down. You just have to trust it. And it's just, I mean, you started your company, right? So it's,
that's a very entrepreneurial phrase to say that, what we're building the airplane as we're taking off.
I keep telling people that every time. I bet you I stole it from you. That's where I got it. Because I keep saying, I'm building the plane as I'm flying it. And
Right.
so and I've had some great advice too, by the way, of like, because I've talked to marketing companies and different things about like branding and I've had people say, which I'm taking this approach of just wait, like, let's figure out what problems there are to solve in the marketplace and who you're going to serve. And then we can build, you don't have to like pigeonhole it into one marketing strategy. Not that,
Sure.
I mean, I'm being planful around that. Right. But, it's this idea of service, and that's the whole premise of With Intention. It's build yourself so that you can build others. So I'm focused on the service piece, and I'm excited to see what happens with it.
That's fantastic. So congratulations on finally taking the plunge. And I knew you would show early signs of success and, greater success later. So you're well on your way there. So give us a little bit of a elevator pitch on the type of services that you offer.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple things. Obviously, I have the book, but I've got a passion for coaching. So I had amazing coaches that I hired that helped me in my journey when I was struggling to get to the point where I was able to lead a team and then get to the point where I could go back in the others. So I actually did a little apprenticeship with an executive coaching company where I was getting coaching and they're like, hey, we think you might be good at this. Would you have any interest? And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Let me try it. And of course, the first time you do anything, you're not very good at it. But I learned the practice of it and fell in love with it. So I know that now I now have a coaching practice. So I'm coaching executives and business leaders, those sorts of things. I've also built a course. So I have the With Intention book and then the With Intention application course. So that's all on my website. You can find that at jongiganti.com. And then I'm building a mastermind group and things of that nature. I'm speaking, I'm doing workshops for companies. If there are any companies out there, I'd love to come in and partner. And it's just this idea of building into people, right? And taking people back, helping them get more clarity, more focus. And look, Stephen, ultimately, here's one of my biggest learnings that I've had in this whole journey is that we all have this interference. And, we have potential. And as Timothy Galway wrote a book, The Inner Game of Tennis in the 70s, that first he had a formula, P equals P minus I, performance equals potential minus interference. And I think it hits a nail on the head. Like we all have this, I think, God-given potential, but we also all have this interference. So whether it's our mindset or our self-limiting beliefs or our fears or the external noise, pressures, whatever it is. And the more we can get in tune to that, I think the more we can root that out and minimize that interference, which then leads us into our potential. And the last thing I'll share with you too, I'm so excited about this. I can't believe I didn't share this with you. I'm building an assessment. So I'm partnered. There's a company, People Best. Jim Hunter runs a company, amazing assessment company out of Dallas, Texas. And they're basically like Moneyball for sales and leadership. So if you remember the movie Moneyball, where they like the metrics, data and analytics. So we're building a With Intention assessment under their platform that I'm going to be able to take, and people can take the assessment, get the awareness of where they are today, and then figure out what their strengths are, what their blind spots are, what their weaknesses are, and work on them. Right. So I'm trying to, gamify leadership development a little bit here and help people level up. So get from, where they are kind of status quo to that elite level.
Yeah, I mean, I think gamification is a wonderful component to add to any development process. It's proven to work, and I'm sure it's going to work for you as well.
Thanks, man. I'm excited.
John, you've been a wealth of knowledge here. You've offered phenomenal advice and philosophical approaches to folks. I'm sure everybody's going to find this super valuable. Thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate you, brother.
You bet. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what is the best way to contact you?
Yeah. So my website is jongiganti.com. And then I post on LinkedIn pretty much every day. So link up with me there. You can follow me or connect with me there. And I'd love to sync up.
Awesome. We'll put that information in the show notes. And I love your LinkedIn posts on a daily basis. So keep up the great work. You're definitely following the, consistency best practice on social media posting. So great job there.
Appreciate that. You too. Thanks, man.
Thank you all very much for listening to another episode of the Built to Finish podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. And if you think anybody in your network would benefit from the content shared today, please do share this episode with them. Thank you very much for listening. That's a wrap for this episode of Built to Finish. Thank you for tuning in. For show notes and more details, head over to podcast.stevenpivnick.com. Special thank you to our sponsor, Enriches, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services that help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Catch you next week.